Mana systems are a part of almost every major card game. They're the flood walls that prevent the games from going completely off the rails. They're restrictions that keep the game in check and make sure the games last more than one turn. At least that's what most people will say about them. There are some games out there that have spat in the face of mana systems and are actively trying to see how many cards players can play per turn. But each game is taking a different approach to the question of what a mana system should look like. I'm going to cover some of the most popular mana systems out there, their pros, cons, and at the end I'll discuss what I think the ideal mana system should look like. Of course, we have to start talking about Magic. The mana system in Magic is found in the land, which are played in the main deck, and you have to play a single land per turn, unless a card effect says you could do it more often. You'd be surprised how many cards let you do it more frequently though. A lot of green cards let you do that. Now, colors are divided up into blue for islands, black for swamps, red for mountains, white for plains, and green for forests. And we also have waste to tap for colorless mana. Those are fun for Eldrazi decks. Now, there's no limit to how many basic lands you can play in your deck. If you really want to, you could do 59 forests in one single spell. You can use any land to pay for colorless mana, but you need to use specific land type to pay for specific mana requirements. To play a card, you're going to tap the lands that came into the battlefield right side up, and you turn them sideways to play cards. For example, we're going to have Gristlebrand. This card requires 4 colorless mana and 4 black mana, meaning you can tap, for example, 4 islands and 4 swamps in order to play it. Now, the biggest issue with lands in Magic is that they live in the main deck, meaning you have to draw them. That means 2 big issues can exist: mana screw and mana flood. Essentially that means you're going to draw no lands or all lands. No lands means you can't play, and all lands mean you can play lands, but that's about it. And so both of these really suck in a game of Magic. An interesting part of Magic's mana system is that they also like to give their cards extra effects, especially the lands. And they'll mess around with kind of what effects they'll give them. Temple of the Foscald will give you extra lands if you have so many lands in play. Contaminated Aquifer also will give you 2 colors, or the option to pick one of 2 colors on a card. Ancient Tomb will give you 2 colorless mana at the cost of 2 life. And so in Magic they like to mess around a lot with kind of what cards can do, what bonus effects they can give lands. Keep in mind though, for these non-basic lands you only play up to 4 copies in your deck for standard, and a single copy in your deck for commander. They have powerful effects, but a lot of them will have small drawbacks in order to keep them more balanced. Pokemon takes a wildly different approach to their mana system. In Pokemon, you use energy cards, and like Magic, they come in different colors to correspond with different Pokemon types. There's grass, fire, water, lightning, psychic, fighting, darkness, metal, and the now defunct fairy energy. You are allowed to have any amount of basic energy cards in your deck, with no limit to how many copies you can have. Any energy can count for colorless energy, just like the rules in Magic. Energy cards are only used though to pay for the cost of Pokemon's attacks. Looking at Charizard EX, it needs 2 fire energy in order to attack. You only get attached 1 energy per turn in Pokemon, so you attach 1 energy to Charizard one turn and then the second the next turn before he's allowed to attack. But energy plays a much smaller role in Pokemon. Energy does not affect whether or not you can play cards. Trainer cards like Professor's Research, Ultra Ball, Rare Candy, and Buddy Buddy Poffin all provide strong effects to search cards, draw cards, and evolve your Pokemon, none of which require you to have any energy in your hand. There are also cards like Excalibur that will accelerate energy from your hand to your Pokemon, bypassing the 1 energy per turn rule, and other cards like Gardevoir EX, which will attach energy to your Pokemon from your discard pile. Pokemon also has non-basic energy. These energy can only be played at 4 copies per deck. There are a lot of different types of these non-basic energies. Jet Energy will help move your Pokemon from your bench to the active spot. Rainbow Energy will give your Pokemon 1 energy of any type in the game. You can even have double colorless energy that provides 2 colorless energy. Lands and Pokemon's energy share a lot of similarities, except that lands are integral to playing the cards in Magic, and they're not in Pokemon. In Pokemon, if you don't see any energy in your opening hand, that's not necessarily the end of the world. There are cards that let you search out energy in Earthen Vessel, as well as just insane draw spells in Professor's Research, so you're likely to see it after a turn or 2. The real way the game is slowed down in Pokemon is more so in evolution. Pokemon cannot evolve the turn they come into play, it can only evolve once per turn. So a Gardevoir EX can't come into play on your first turn of the game, it'll take several turns to set up your board if you have a lot of evolved Pokemon in your deck. The differences in these mana systems also explains some aspects of their game design. Magic the Gathering has a mulligan system to address the problem of mana screw and mana flood, meaning they can shuffle their hand back to the deck and draw a fresh new hand, but then they have to put one card from their hand back into the deck. Pokemon has no mulligan system. As long as you've drawn at least one basic Pokemon, you keep the hand you have. Drawing in Pokemon is also a lot more normalized. Back when the game first came out, it was very common to see people just deck themselves in Pokemon because drawing was so easy. In Magic, if you see someone drawing 7 cards in a single turn, go for the throat. Overall, I really like Pokemon's design for the mana system. It's required to play the game and you need to find it, but if you don't see it in your first or second turn, it doesn't mean you've lost the game immediately, and there are a lot of easy ways to find the cards in your deck. Moving into one of the new kids on the block, Lorcana has their own take on the mana system. Instead of having land cards or energy cards, they've opted for making potentially all their cards mana. Mana in Lorcana is called ink, referring to the fact that all the cards are referring to stories and characters created by different authors and artists. Very cute flavor for the game, so they get points for that. On the top right corner of every Lorcana card is the cost on the card, and some cards will have a special design around them and some won't. If a card has that special border like Rapunzel, that means she can be played face down in your inkwell and can be used to pay the cost on cards in the same way that lands are in Magic. You do have to show your opponent the card you're putting face down though, so they know you aren't cheating. There are no colors for the ink in Lorcana, mostly because ink is just the face-down cards, but decks are restricted to only being allowed 2 colors per deck. Lorcana's system fixes the issue of mana flood. You'll never have too much mana and not enough cards because your mana are your cards, and this system is kind of meh in my opinion. It fixes the issue of mana flood, so they get points for that, but you have to constantly decide which cards you might need in the future and which ones you can afford to give up. Once a card is inked, it's gone. It's not like you can just add it back to your hand on a later turn. So it adds another level of complexity to the game that I'm not a big fan of. Maybe the card that perfectly gets you out of the situation you inked last turn, and that sucks. Like Magic, there's a mulligan mechanic in Lorcana, because if you draw no inkable cards, then you cannot play the game, and so mana screw is still possible. Overall, I think Lorcana took a unique approach to lands to try and solve the problems other card games have, but in the end I think it's just okay. It doesn't address mana screw and introduces new problems of having to evaluate mana cards in your hand as being more precious because they're not only lands, but also cards. One Piece has an entirely different take on its mana system compared to the other card games. In One Piece, you have a cost in the top left-hand corner. You have to tap mana called Dawn in this game in order to use a card. For example, if you have a 9-cost Zoro card in your hand, you have to tap 9 Dawn to play him. Unlike in other card games though, the mana aka Dawn isn't in the main deck. You have a separate 10-card Dawn deck. Each turn you'll get 2 Dawn cards onto your field, unless you're the player going first, then you get 1 Dawn on your first turn, and 2 Dawn each turn after that. This take on mana is fantastic. It is literally impossible to get mana screwed or mana flooded in any way, and instead the focus on the game becomes how you play cards and reduces some of the random variability from the game. There are also no colors associated with Dawn, so unlike in Magic where you need to see specific lands to play specific cards, that's not the case in One Piece. Your deck is limited to play the number of colors that match your leader. For example, if you have blue-purple Luffy, your deck only gets to play blue and purple cards. If you have a green Bonnie leader, your deck can only play green cards, but your ability to play cards is only affected by how many Dawn you have, and not if you have the right type of Dawn. Unlike Magic and Pokemon, there are no special types of Dawn. All Dawn is the exact same, but they do have a bonus effect. During your turn, you can take an active, aka untapped Dawn, and rest it or tap it to give it to one of your characters. Now, during your turn, the character that has that rested Dawn will gain 1000 power. This helps you attack your opponent, and so even if you have no cards in your hand, your mana is still useful to you. I'm a big fan of One Piece's external mana system. It solves the issue of mana while still keeping the game at a slow pace by limiting the amount of mana you get each turn, so you can't just play all your cards all at once. Bandai has also continued using this idea of external mana in their newer game Gundam. In Gundam though, you only get 1 mana source per turn, called an EX resource. Gundam also introduced the idea of levels for cards as well. A card like Strike Gundam is a level 5 cost 4 card. What this means is if you want to play it, you have to have at least 5 mana sources on your board, but it only costs 4 mana to play. This is a very cool way to lock powerful cards into only being playable in the late game, but make those cards more playable by not having to be 7 or 10 cost. If Strike Gundam was a 8 cost card, it would probably see no play, but because it's a level 5 cost 4 card, it's a solid choice to use in the middle of the game in order to have a big body that costs not too much. Next we have Yu-Gi-Oh, the game with no mana system. Yeah, not a whole lot to say here. Well, let's discuss how the game is affected by not having a mana system. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is incredibly fast-paced. Most games last between 2 to 3 turns, but in the game's defense, you are playing a lot on those 2 to 3 turns, making a lot of decisions and considering all the options available to you. Imagine if you're able to play cards in Magic as if they were all 0 cost, or if every Pokemon card could attack with no energy and evolve in the same turn they come into play. The pace of play is very fast, and because there's no mana system, you get to do pretty much anything you want. The only restriction is your deck. For this reason, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about making decks as consistent as possible, because you're able to pop off immediately if you draw the right cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very interesting case of how a game can be successful without a mana system, and it's unfortunate there haven't been a lot of other card games who've been able to mirror this and be successful. In my opinion, the ideal mana system needs to have an external mana source, similar to One Piece or Gundam. A lot of newer card games are experimenting with the idea of external mana. Riftbound is doing the same idea as One Piece, Sorcery made a separate mana deck, and even the Hololive TCG has an external mana source. Pokemon in a way even admits that this is a better design. Their mobile app Pokémon TCG Pocket has removed energy as a card, and instead you can just attach 1 energy per turn from your energy zone to your Pokemon. I also think that if your mana is going to be used to pay for the cost on cards like in Magic, Lorcana, or One Piece, it should have an extra effect as well. One Piece does this with an attack boost effect, and a lot of non-basic lands in Magic have extra effects you can use. I think something along the lines of return 3 mana to your deck, draw a card, being a blanket effect or extra effect could be a good design for a card game. In this way, you're able to draw into cards when you have low hand size, and extra mana is able to be used in some beneficial way. Now, that may not be the perfect effect, but I think the additional effect on mana sources would be good for overall game design. Now, there are definitely a lot of other card games I did not have the chance to cover, and all of them approach mana systems differently. Some of them maybe don't even have one. If you want to comment on the ones you like or really dislike, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know what other videos you'd like to see. Have a good one.